Hello and welcome to the first edition of RealMojo.live, where we like to dig in with people, find out what really drives them, what hypes them up, and get them to encourage you. So, with that said, without further ado, one of my really good friends and somebody that I kind of got my start with in the tech world, I have got a special guest, Bill Paul. Bill, how are you doing today?
What an intro. I love after all these years, you still hesitate when saying both my first and last name.
I do. You know what it is? I was told by a very wise man one time, never trust a man with two first names. No, joke.
It's almost like to this day, your mind's like, no, that can't be right. That's two first names.
Oh, no joke. No joke. Well, Bill, how have you been, sir?
I mean, life's great. Life in Austin's awesome. We could use a little bit more rain, but it's been a fun ride. I mean, yeah, I have nothing to complain about besides my golf scores from time to time. Even that, there's not much I have on my list. What about you?
Nothing much. I'm over at Feedonomics and doing the sales executive thing over there now. You're at Quantum Metrics, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Metric. No.
Metric. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And now you are a regional VP of West Coastal, or what is it? West Central.
So we're basically central U.S.
Okay.
So, I feel like any of us in sales in the middle of the country, we're kind of the redhead stepchild still. So they just throw us on whatever team needs the revenue. And so, we're a part of the West, but my territory is basically everything south of Wisconsin down through Texas.
Oh, wow. That's a good sized territory. So cool. Well, Bill, why don't we dig into it, man? When I asked you to be on here, you were like, man, let's talk. You wanted to talk about something, which I wanted to talk about, which is kind of our early startup culture, that we were a part of at Big Commerce, and, what it meant to us, how it changed our lives, like what it really was that was going on that was so dynamic. Because I've been around a lot of different people that have been in startups, but I think we have a unique story with Big Commerce. I think we did things a little differently, probably, but we learned a lot in the process. So,
yeah. So happy to get started. Where would you like to begin?
Yeah. Well, I think we should start with, why did you come to Texas in the first place? What was the draw to Texas? Because you're originally from Chicago, right?
Well, Chicago, aka Canada, as you originally had told me. So, full story. We moved to Texas. Basically 2010, Chicago was in the gutter. The housing bubble had hit Chicago much harder than a lot of other cities. My wife, girlfriend at the time, Jenny, was basically given an ultimatum. She was told, hey, listen, your position is not going to exist anymore in Chicago. You have two options. You can move to Las Vegas or you can move to San Antonio. I loved the idea of getting into a warmer climate, and we took the leap. So, she called me one day. She was pretty upset about it. She said, I guess I have to look for a new job. And I said, well, why don't we just pack our bags and move to Texas?
Well, and 2 kids later. Yeah.
2 Texans later.
2 Texans, yeah.
In about 12 years. A lot's changed. But it was definitely a good on the whim decision to make the move.
Now, one of my favorite stories, because I think when people know me and you, they know we're good friends. They know we like each other. We care about each other. So but one of the things that I've got to confess is, we came to the same meetup to get hired at Big Commerce, right? And I think I've told you this before, but when they hired me before I even got out of town, right? And the first thing I said is, they said, "So what's your style?" And I said, "Well, it's probably not like that pretty boy Superman looking dude. I was talking about you." And they go, "Bill Paul?" And I said, "Yeah, that guy." But I said, "I'm good at what I do," and I didn't even know you. I just threw you under the bus, man. But it was, it was fun times back then for sure. But that was a wild event. That was really cool.
I love how you get your first job in Austin Tech by just throwing me under the bus. That's the starting point. So I didn't realize that was a part of the story.
Oh, yeah.
That was an event. So I'll tell you how that happened. We were living in San Antonio, like I said, had made the move. At some point, if you move from a big city to Texas, San Antonio just, especially back then, did not feel big enough.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't have the vibe. And so we knew Austin was a happening place. We knew we wanted to be in Austin. And basically we're on the fence. We're like, do we move back to Chicago or do we stay in Texas? If we're going to stay in Texas, let's give Austin a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually, again, what brought us to Austin that night was an interview my wife had.
Oh, wow.
And for whatever reason, I kid you not, I go, "Honey, I'm going to go with you." And I put on a suit and tie, as you remember. Which is way out of place. And I'm just like, "Hey, maybe I'll go in and see if there are any cool companies I could work for."
Yeah.
And literally showed up to Austin wearing a suit and tie, sitting in the car, Googled startups, somehow came across that Craigslist posting.
Oh, wow.
And the Craigslist posting was basically just so ridiculous in hindsight, but it was free pizza, beer, hiring event. And then in the small print, "Hey, SaaS startup technology company who just raised an A round." And I remember thinking to myself, I don't care at all about the free pizza or beer, but that SaaS company that's in the small print, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Right.
And so I had that same day sent a note to Kelsey.
Yeah.
And said, "Hey, I saw that you're supposed to register for this event. Can I join?" And she responded quickly, just said, "Yeah, sure, come on by." I remember telling Jenny after she got her interview, I said, "Hey, listen, honey, we're going to have to stay a little bit later. I actually found a hiring event happening tonight." So there was no plans until we found out about it, up until about 3:00 that day. And if you remember, it was in the Chase building, which is not like a giant building downtown. It was basically just Chase.
No, it was like a sweatshop of like a boiler room almost, just it was so small.
Yeah, and so Jenny drops me off. She goes, "Wait, are you sure this is where it's at?" And it was that little sign on the door was "Big Commerce hiring event" up the stairs. And I remember looking back at her and go, "Yeah, I mean, I guess this is it." She's like, "Well, are you sure you want to go?" I said, "Well, we already said yes, so let's just see how this plays out." So basically, that's how that played out.
That's wild.
I don't remember you from the night, but I remember people saying how incredible of a job you did on your resume.
Yeah.
The most graphic resume they'd ever seen. They're like, "Oh, you're like our number 2 candidate behind Jeremy." Resume.
Yeah, I drove 6 hours from Odessa to go to that. And wow. I had just left a position a month earlier, right? And I had started my new, agency business, and I drove 6 hours, and I figured, if I'm going to drive 6 hours, I'm going to do this right. And so at the bottom of that resume, it literally said, hire a genius. It said hire a genius. I'm like, dude, like I was 35 years old, man. I was not sure anybody was even going to look at me because I wasn't a kid right out of college, you know? So I wanted to really put myself out there. I don't honestly think that I'm a genius necessarily, but boy, I was going to claim it, and I stuck it out there. It worked, and 7.5 years later, I was one of the last people from that hiring event still standing. So,
I gotta imagine you had to be the last one. That's incredible.
I think so. And I mean, not for any nefarious reason or anything like that. I feel like so many of us went on to really great things in different ways at different places. And what was really cool, not just about that event, but was was really that culture that we had, that friendship. I didn't realize it, but that night was the night that I met some of my best friends over the last 12 years. I mean, that has changed my life incredibly. And so I worked with them for a long time. I still talk to most of those people, like off and on periodically, I'm still in touch with them because, for the longest time, like I came to just like you. Well, you were driving back from San Antonio for a while there. And these were, Haas and Bfos and like Kevin and all these guys, they were our buddies, so like it was an incredible experience for me. I don't know that I'd ever felt that level of camaraderie in business like that, like we had with the Shoguns. Which tell the audience a little bit about what we were, the Shoguns group that they hired us into.
Well, what I find remarkable about that, I didn't know the story of. I knew you moved from Odessa. I didn't realize it was for that particular event.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine a lot of us had a very similar kind of off the wall story as to how we got started there. There was just something in the ethos. I know, some of the guys were selling other like print ads and newspapers, and some people were selling insurance. Some people had their MBA and wanted to get into tech. It was all over the board. And I will say it feels like it was that kind of audacity of all of us coming together that made it the catalyst for something really special. The Shoguns, we were just a part of that class, and it was an interesting class because it was the first time I felt the company had kind of grown up. So they had just the money. They were, for the first time, actually figuring out comp plans, because I'm sure you know this. Some of the guys that were hired before us, they didn't even have a commission element in their comp plan.
There wasn't many that were hired before us, which is important to note. When we got there, it was in the 70s, 80s, somewhere in there as far as hiring. It wasn't even over 100, I don't think.
Well, and you're including the team overseas,
right?
I don't even buy that they were that big at the time.
No.
I know we were one of the first 40 employees hired in Austin.
Oh, really?
And I think we had, who knows, anywhere from 15 to 30 developers and a team over in Australia. But
right.
Yeah, it was, they hired that class, and it was the first time they kind of grew up. So I know our first comp plan had a salary plus a commission element, which frankly, I don't know how you get into sales without a commission element. That's the whole reason to sign up for it. And then we just kind of we really inherited that ethos and kind of the weight of being the go-to-market team. There were guys there before, but it felt like that was the first class that was really brought in to scale the financial and sales arm.
Well, when you look at the people that were hired in the group, and when I call them the Shoguns, basically we have a group of these guys that we were all hired with that are basically a brotherhood of friends, that we came away from Big Commerce with. And what I saw them doing when they were hiring us is it's like they were hiring, it seemed like, a couple of steps ahead, 3 or 4 steps ahead, because like when I tell people, I'm like, when I tell people about you, I'm like, yeah, he was, he's the guy that sold the first enterprise deal at Big Commerce, the first big deal, let's say that, at Big Commerce, and, talk about some of the things we went through, because we essentially, for the, first 2 or 3 years, did nothing but got experimented with, as far as like, hey, go do this, try this, and me and you and the rest of us guys that really were bought in, we would do it. We'd do whatever they asked us to do. And because of that, I think, we saw a lot more success over our time there than a lot of folks, just simply because we were willing to go for it, and they knew that. They knew that every last one of us was, a ride or die. So
guys that are crazy enough to drive 6 hours for an interview above a bank.
Yeah.
Daily from San Antonio for 4 months, they have a few screws loose, that's for sure. But there was something about the ethos. I know RA was the one who labeled the group, but I think the whole idea of the Shogun was just the discipline and the intensity at which we worked.
Right.
Because yeah, we were good friends, but we were riding each other hard. And I mean, the amazing thing, you talk about that deal being big. It was not a big deal.
No, it wasn't. That's why I threw the quotes.
But like, it was a $600 a month deal. So we're talking about a very small technology deal, and certainly no deal that should ever be described as enterprise.
Right. Yeah. No. But we didn't know what to call it back then, really.
I still feel like that's how it exists today. Oh, you're an enterprise guy. How big are your deals? Oh, they're 10 grand. Yeah, that's not enterprise. If it's not over $1 million, like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. Well, I think. Part of the way that I came up with the name for this show is really about like the Mojo element, right? Which is, to me, was an important part of the team spirit attitude. I get that name Mojo from the Permian Panthers. Permian High School, where I went to high school, and me and RA had a conversation about Mojo and team spirit in action, and then. He just adopted it, and we took off with it, man. And I feel like that's probably the best way to describe what we did, is we really were like the group that you could come to with a crazy ass idea and say, hey, you want to give it a shot? And if it was smart, we would tell you. And if we thought it was stupid, we'd tell you, and they got true honesty out of us. They got people that were a level up as far as, drive too. So that being able to really kick it into high gear, I think you're right. That drive is what made it different.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. It felt we were working at a startup, but it felt like we were building the startup, and we always took pride in that. I mean, I still remember so many of the stories back then, but some of the biggest things that stood out to me is the level of pride we would take in for closing deals that were tiny. And I see reps today that don't even take that much pride in multiple $100,000s deals.
Right.
And that was just, there was something special about the group where, yes, we were all hungry. Yes, we all wanted to build our lives and career around tech, but first and foremost, we were really behind the mission. We were going to take the company public. We were going to take it to an exit event. And we really tended to celebrate the successful steps in that direction more so than just the individual accomplishments.
Mm-hmm. It was incredible, because I saw our guys and people from our group really continue to be that beacon throughout, as we split up and went into our own groups, right? being that encouragement. I mean, right up till the end when we were leaving, man, leaving Big Commerce, you left before me and then I left later on. But we were pushing for it. We were encouraging people, man. And I found that, a lot. I changed a lot over those years because when I came in, I was from West Texas, man. I'm a redneck, yeah, just a little bit. And so, it was a real culture shock in some ways to come to Austin, which is a totally not a Southern town, really. It's not really, and it's a great town, but it's not really like any other Southern town. And come here, and man, I have grown so much with people, and a big part of that that really changed my life was being at Big Commerce. Realizing and being encouraged into who I could be. Constantly. I mean, RA always Robert Alvarez, the CFO of Big Commerce, always encouraging us, always trying to guide us, always giving us wisdom. And being a great example for that, it was so huge for me. I mean, it changed my life. It changed how I raised my children. It changed how they grew up. It gave them opportunities that I'd always dreamed of but never would have found out in West Texas. And man, I just have to say, like, the amount of friends that I got from it is worth more than any of my accomplishments. I wouldn't give the friends back. I don't care about the accomplishments that we had there. All I care about is the fact that, man, I have a rich family of people that I care about deeply and that I know care about me. And part of that's because we went through some struggle together, and faced a lot of firing lines, in the e-commerce world. But hey, look, Big Commerce went public, man. It's a great thing, and I think we all can take pride in that. Now, Bill, we have talked about the fun we had, and it was a lot of fun. It was some great relationships, a lot of camaraderie. But what I really want to know, and I think everybody really will learn a lot from you on, is what did that mean to you? How did that change the way you approach things, and how do you apply the things that you've learned in your life now?
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing that really stands out, and it even stands out from how we started this, is it's tough to directly measure the impact passion makes on a company, an individual, and a culture. And the importance of great cultures and passion and how much they can produce so above and beyond what is typically measurable. And so, I mean, like you said, I mean, a lot of us, we got together, we were the first 40 employees. We saw them move offices. We saw us build a much bigger office. Eventually that led to an IPO. It was that enterprise program that ended up accounting for, I think, north of 65% of the company's revenue upon IPO. And I remember having conversations with people about the audacity of starting to sell the product for more. And for me, it was just, again, it was always about the passion play. It's like, how could we differentiate ourselves from the competition? And you kind of just win after it. And that passion really allowed us at the end of the story, looking back, realize, man, we accomplished a lot. Some of the stuff we were accomplishing was not a part of our comp plan. It wasn't what the company said, hey, this is what you need to do. The company gave us a pretty simple comp plan, and they promoted passion, and we ran with it. And I think about all the creative ideas that spawned, and eventually how much success it produced for everyone. And so it just really taught me the value of passion, and that regardless of your technology background, you can add tremendous amounts of value to startups if you're truly passionate. And I don't mean like surface level, rah. I'm not talking about the woo, and the cheers.
Right.
I'm not talking about that
You're
stuff.
talking about putting it down, making it happen, putting it
Yeah,
into action.
because yes, there was a lot of that too, and we were having fun, but we were about execution, and the passion shows up for everyone in different ways. Some people are going to be more introverted, some people are extroverted, but when someone is truly passionate about something, they're a joy to work with, and the stuff they create is so much better than everything else that's out there. And that's what it felt like we were able to do, is infuse so much more value to the organization than just the dollars and cents of the revenue. And heck, there was a lot of revenue that came from that team as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? There were, it was so interesting because like I've been blessed to be a part of a couple of groups that are kind of different and significant for me. But really, the Shoguns hold a very special place in my heart because I feel like we earned a lot of the respect that we now hold, from people during that time. And it was really a great time. And I'm very thankful for you, coming on the show. This is our first show, and I thought, hey, man, what a great person to have on, Bill Paul. We know each other so well and been through so many things. And, man, I just have to say, as always, I'm so proud of you. Every time you talk to me, you empower me, you strengthen me, you give me hope. So I just want to thank you, publicly and say, hey, man, thanks for being a brother. And thank you for coming on and being my first guest. And, we will talk to you soon. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, there was one more thing you'd asked me to share before I came on.
Oh, yeah.
How I'm applying that today.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So it's great. We talked a lot about what we did and the past. For me today, it's so incredible to think about the culture we built. And so as a leader myself, that's the thing I'm always hoping to grow and build is high performing teams. And one thing that made us really special as a group is how diverse we were. And yes, we came from all these different backgrounds. We had very simple principles, which were, basically our North Star was take the company public or take it towards an exit.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, it was, we talked about passion was highly promoted, creativity was highly celebrated. But that was it. So like to me today, that's the key. When I'm building teams, it's all about, are these people going to be a good fit? Can they build their own culture? And, are they potentially spending the time they have at the company, their precious time, building something great? And I thought Big Commerce gave us such an incredible blueprint where it's really all of our responsibility now to pay it forward. And
Absolutely.
like, work should be rewarding on all the levels.
Right.
That's what we were all about. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the exit. It wasn't about just any one thing. Like we had great friends. We built our lives on the culture that we created. We did. And we never stopped growing. And so that's the thing I think a lot about, and why I was so happy to join this show is how do you replicate that in especially more sophisticated enterprise technology companies and in the world of Zoom? I think the jury is still out, but one thing's for sure is whenever I see people that are passionate and they have a vision for their future, that's something I'm going to latch on to.
Yeah, I have a different view of that now than I did before. Because I think a lot of times when you're young, you're so full of just, I'm going to conquer the world. And excuse me. And then a couple of, years later, you get kicked in the teeth a couple of times and you give up or you go another direction. And I think for the most part, we didn't do that. We just kept driving, and we were the kind of people that just, you're right, that passion was unbelievable, and that culture of caring about one another, and the bucket one, bucket two that they have, you can't just have bucket one, which is who you are business
So
wise.
basically, the bucket
Bucket
one is
two,
the skills and the basic criteria for the
right,
job.
right. And
And then
bucket
bucket
two is who
two
you are. Yeah,
was that cultural element.
yeah,
And yeah, you need it both. And it
yeah.
makes it so simple to say, is this person a fit? Yes, the criteria is there, but you need the culture and the personality as well to make great teams.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Bill, thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate your friendship. And like I was saying before, sorry I almost forgot to cover that last point. But man, thank you for coming on. I've really enjoyed this. This has made my day, and I'm so excited to share it with the world.
Yeah, right back at you, amigo. Keep it up. This is so great. I hope people find a lot of value in it. And if anyone wants to continue the conversation, you can reach me on LinkedIn or, well, pretty much LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, after you sift through like 500 Bill Pauls, but
Well, I'm the Bill Paul with the long space in between the name.
oh,
Bill
okay. Paul.
Paul.
Oh, okay. I get it. I see what you're doing there. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you for coming on. It was great to have you. We'll see you soon.
My pleasure.
All right.
Yeah, so when you talked about being from Odessa, and it was nothing like Austin. I remember thinking to myself, like, well, did other people out of Odessa wear boxes on their head in the middle of summer?
Hey, I closed them.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I closed them. I closed them with a box on my head because I couldn't hear. Because do you remember those cubicles? They had tops, like the borders of the tops were like this tall.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you were just facing Bill Paul all day with it getting blasted. My hair's blowing back. You know.
Yeah, we were bringing the heat. I mean, it was boiler room esque, and we're dialing for dollars, and we would get on the phone and get rowdy, and all of a sudden we looked over, Haas and I look over, and you just have a cardboard box on your head. And I remember we lost it, and we of course took a picture, and later on we're like, dude, what were you doing with a box on your head? You're like, well, you guys are so darn loud. How am I supposed to talk to my customers? Of course, I just put a box on my head.
Oh, good times. Good times. I won't tell the one that
I don't know
my favorite one because it'll get us in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, but we had the wall. What was it? The wall of shame, where every stupid phrase that somebody said got wrote on the wall. It wasn't the wall of shame. It was like
originally it was supposed to be like the wall of great quotes.
Yeah, never.
Totally started using it just to roast people, and we would play it off like they had said something intelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pigeons.
Well, here's one you'll remember. Man, I got a face like a ham sandwich. I'd always tell people that. And then another one that I always said, or that I said that got put on there is I got on the phone and I was ready to dial for the first time at Big Commerce. I get on the phone and I'm about to dial and I go, and the legend begins. And then I go, how do you use this thing? I had no idea how to use the phone. Stupid.
I distinctly remember that, and that you'll never forget someone doing that. And I know you said it kind of out of comedy, but at the same time you're like, "Yo, this is it. This is the moment it all changed."
Yeah, dude.
There were a lot of calls. After you figured out how to dial the phone, how many hours do you think you spent on Big Commerce calls?
Oh my God, I don't even want to know how many hours I've been on the phone with Big.
How how many years of your life have been used for big conference calls?
There's at least 3 years of my life that I feel like out of that, full time, like dedicated at least 3 years worth out of those 7.5 in time. Like it totally was spent at Big Commerce, maybe 4. Because it was digging in deep late at night sometimes. But man, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So